In today's video, we are going to go over the most recent OWASP Top 10 security vulnerabilities. The Open Web Application Security Project works to improve the security of software through community-led open source projects. Being aware of the top security vulnerability risks is the first step in making a safer web for everyone. My name's Ben Martin, and I'm a security analyst here at Sucuri. I hail from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and I've been with the company since 2013. My primary job duties include fixing hacked websites, finding undetected malware, investigating credit card theft, and contributing to the Sucuri blog. Vulnerable software is the #1 cause of compromised websites. Security should be considered a priority from day one, not just for website owners, but for software developers as well. Major security vulnerabilities have caused untold numbers of website infections and headaches for everyone involved. The better awareness that we have about the top security threats, then the better off we will all be. What are the top 10 security threats as ranked by OWASP? Let's find out. Number 1. Broken access control. Topping the list of security vulnerabilities is broken access control. Software applications such as websites will almost always contain an administrator panel, which tends to be restricted by a username and password at the very least. When access to these administrator functions is broken, it allows attackers to view data that they shouldn't or obtain the ability to perform administrator-like functions which they should not have. An example of broken access control was present within WordPress version 4.7.1 from 2017, affecting the REST API. It allowed attackers to change the content of posts and pages within the WordPress database without any authentication whatsoever. This quickly resulted in thousands of defaced websites. Fortunately, the WordPress security team acted quickly and issued a patch right away. Number 2. Cryptographic failures. The runner-up for severe software vulnerabilities is cryptographic failures. It consists of a failure to protect sensitive data that should not be publicly accessible. As more and more of our lives are conducted online, companies and websites are in turn handling more of our personal, sometimes sensitive data. Sadly, hardly a month goes by without another high-profile data leak from sometimes major companies. There are many examples of how data can be handled poorly, but two common ones include the poor handling and storage of payment and credit card information, and websites which do not use HTTPS encryption, which can expose their users to data leaks. Number 3. Injection. A code injection happens when an attacker sends invalid data to the web application with the intention of making it do something that the application is not designed or programmed to do, otherwise known as hacking. The core of a code injection vulnerability is the lack of validation and sanitization of the data used by the web application, which means that this vulnerability can be present on almost any type of technology related to websites. Anything that accepts parameters as input can be vulnerable to a code injection attack. Vulnerabilities which make it possible for unauthenticated users to inject code can allow attackers to redirect all website traffic to a malicious domain of the attacker's choosing. Number 4. Insecure design. A new addition to the OWASP Top 10, clocking in at number 4 on the list, is insecure design. This focuses on the ground-up development of web applications from the very beginning of their lifecycle. Insecure design is essentially the avoidance of hard-coded security protocols and methods within the initial development of a web application. Insecure design is essentially the avoidance of hard-coded security protocols and methods within the initial development of a web application, as well as the failure to take into account risks and attack vectors during the planning, development, and implementation of a web application. A great example of insecure design actually exists within most CMS platforms, including WordPress, which powers roughly 40% of the entire web. By default, the authentication panel to access the admin area is publicly accessible and does not limit the number of failed logins on the admin panel. This renders them particularly vulnerable to brute force attacks and requires the installation of third-party security extensions to mitigate. Compromised admin panels are a huge driver of website infections. Number 5. Security misconfigurations. There are a litany of possible security misconfigurations, but one of the most common is keeping the CMS default configurations. The most common attacks are entirely automated. Many of these attacks rely on users to have only default settings. This means that a large number of attacks can be mitigated by changing the default settings when installing a CMS. One of the most notorious ongoing security incidents involving security misconfigurations through default settings is the Mirai botnet. Mirai takes advantage of Internet of Things devices such as web-connected security cameras that use the default passwords, in other words, a lot of them, and turns them into a giant botnet. This was initially used in DDoS attacks on Minecraft servers, but has since been repurposed to use in many other web attacks. Number 6. Vulnerable and outdated components. Attackers actively seek out websites using vulnerable components and aggressively exploit them to spread malware, spam, and phishing. Vulnerable components are commonplace on websites, and there are some very good reasons for that. Webmasters cannot keep up with the pace of updates. Sometimes legacy code won't work on newer versions of its dependencies. Webmasters are sometimes scared that something will break, or sometimes they just don't have the expertise. Both Sucuri and OWASP recommend virtual patching, such as our firewall, for the cases where patching is not possible. Number 7. Identification and authentication failures. A broken authentication vulnerability can allow an attacker to use manual or automatic methods to try to gain control over any account that they want in a system, or even worse, to gain complete control over the system. Websites with broken authentication vulnerabilities are very common on the web. Broken authentication usually refers to logic issues that occur on the application authentications mechanism, like bad session management prone to username enumeration, when a malicious actor uses brute force techniques to either guess or confirm valid users in a system. To minimize authentication failure risks, avoid leaving the login page for admins publicly accessible to all visitors of a website. Number 8. Software and data integrity failures. These failures can take many forms, particularly since as the web evolves, it is more and more common to use third-party code and services within web applications. These failures can be summarized as follows: usage of code that does not verify the integrity of the source, usage of third-party plugins where you do not control or cannot see the source, plugins and extensions from untrusted sources, the introduction of or potential for compromise or unauthorized access, and automatic updates that assume the trust of the source. Two recent examples of data integrity failures include 2 supply chain attacks on website environments. Firstly, the Access Press supply chain hack of late 2021, where backdoored versions of WordPress themes and plugins from the official Access Press website were distributed to unsuspecting victims, and the popular Magento extension development company Fishpig were hacked in August of late 2022, and backdoored versions of their e-commerce software were distributed to an unknown number of e-commerce websites. Number 9. Security logging and monitoring failures. Not having an efficient logging and monitoring process in place can increase the damage of a website compromise or prevent you from even knowing that a compromise took place at all. The importance of securing and monitoring a website cannot be understated. While 100% security is not a realistic goal, there are ways to keep your website monitored on a regular basis. This allows you to take immediate action if a compromise is to take place. Here at Sucuri, we highly recommend that every website is properly monitored. As part of our services, we include both an external site check monitoring, as well as a daily server-side scan to monitor your files. If you need to monitor your server, such as a VPS, OSEC is freely available to help you. OSEC actively monitors all aspects of system activity with file integrity monitoring, log monitoring, root check, and process monitoring. And finally, number 10. Server-side request forgery. To quote OWASP, server-side request forgery flaws occur whenever a web application is fetching a remote resource without validating the user-supplied URL. It allows an attacker to coerce the application to send a crafted request to an unexpected destination, even when protected by a firewall, VPN, or another type of network access control list. As cloud services increase in usage and popularity, as well as their complexity, the prevalence and risk of SSRF attacks increase too. And that, folks, is the top 10 most severe vulnerabilities list from OWASP. Remember, the more aware we are of risks, the better we can protect ourselves from the attackers. If you need help securing or monitoring your website, or need help recovering from a compromise, Sucuri is here to help. Make sure you check out the links to our resources at the bottom of this video, and hit the like button and subscribe for more website security videos and guides. Reach out on social or click the link below this video and we can assist you with your website.